Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk about why people don't care about the environment. And this is like a really clickbaity title, but what I mean is this just reflects an opinion that I used to have on like humans and society and the global population in general. Like I'm always wondering, why don't people seem to care more about the environment when climate change and the climate crisis is one of the biggest threats that the human race has ever faced? And I was wondering like, why does it feel like I'm the only person who cares sometimes? However, what I've learned in the past few years is that it's not true that people don't care about the environment so much as it is about people don't have the capacity, knowledge, or opportunities to care about the environment. You know, there's a difference. I've come to realize that there are two overarching reasons, two general ideas that can explain why people don't care or cannot care about the environment as much as they should be. And there are like hundreds of ways that we can explain this, but I've just gone about this with two main ideas. Number one, the idea of climate anxiety or climate grief, and the second one being anthropocentrism. So firstly, I wanted to talk about climate anxiety, and I've mentioned this briefly in my previous video on a personal level. Climate anxiety can be considered any anxious feelings that one feels when thinking about the climate crisis, in response to a lot of like the doom and gloom of climate change media, you know, like the world is ending, blah blah blah, all that stuff, irreversible change, a lot of fun things to be thinking about in your day-to-day. And personally, I've experienced this as something that is very paralyzing when it comes to trying to take action or trying to learn more about it. Hearing so much negativity in the media about climate change, or just knowing that it's a problem that is extremely complex and big, has always made me feel like I can't do anything about it, even though I really, really want to. And this has been studied by social scientists more and more in recent years, whether it's climate anxiety, climate grief, despair, hopelessness, any negative emotion that comes up in response to thinking about or trying to take action for the climate, is now increasingly being studied, although we're not super there yet with understanding how this works. But we have this general understanding today that despair, anxiety, and fear can be extremely limiting emotions when it comes to trying to take action for the climate. And unless this is kind of mediated by collective action, working together as a society, or having opportunities to do something about it, generally climate anxiety is one of the biggest reasons that societies fail to respond. Because why worry about, you know, the world ending when people are more worried about, you know, going to work the next day or earning enough to, you know, pay rent at the end of the month? And these are all extremely valid reasons, and valid things to be thinking about, because people just don't have much opportunity or chance or emotional energy to care about the bigger picture. And it's not because people are selfish, but we live in a society where that is the primary concern. And so, for example, there's this one article that documents how climate grief amongst activists can actually lead to paralysis of action, unless it is combined with feelings such as hope, which people usually gain through collective activity. And this would explain why a lot of us don't do much, because a lot of us are not taking collective climate action. There aren't a lot of opportunities for us to kind of unite. Like, you're not gonna go up and ring your neighbor's doorbell and be like, hey, let's go save some turtles today. Like, it's generally quite hard to take people out of their day-to-day routines and, you know, do something for the environment. What we learned during COVID is that isolation has a very unproductive effect on people. Your emotional well-being is highly linked to the action that you take. And so if people are feeling really down about something too often, you're less likely to do something about that thing that you need to do, no matter how important it is. Whether it's taking care of yourself or taking care of the environment, the more stressed a person is, the more overwhelming sense of responsibility someone feels, the less likely they are going to have the emotional energy to do something effectively about it. In another article, Weller talks about how in the realm of like consumption, there's this narrative that's been pushed whereby a lot of the everyday citizen feels like it's their job to kind of save the world through their consumption practices. And we know this is true from terms like, you know, carbon footprint, you know, trying to reduce your carbon footprint, as if the individual consumer has more power to change society than the actual producers and large companies who are designing unsustainable products, marketing things like clothes in a way that makes people feel like they have to be shopping all the time. And so sustainability can sometimes be made to seen as this private and moral decision, like saving the world is the individual's responsibility as opposed to society's responsibility, and that we have to like restructure and change everything about the way we do everything. And yeah, that individual responsibility becomes extremely overwhelming, and people are just less likely to do stuff, even though they might care about the environment, like they might care and want to do something, but there's just so much overwhelming responsibility put, an unfair amount of responsibility, an unrealistic amount of responsibility put on the individual person. The second big idea as to why we might find it really difficult to make change or find opportunities for change or work collectively as a society for change is this idea of anthropocentrism. Now, anthropocentrism basically refers to the idea that some humans believe that we as a human race are at like the center of the universe, and that the world, you know, exists to serve us. And so you have these sub ideas like animals and nature exist to serve human needs. There's no need to respect nature's balance, or there's no need to think about living in harmony with natural life cycles. So you'll find politicians saying things like, oh, Western countries burned through so many fossil fuels to get rich, and now it's our turn because it's our right, as if nature exists as the right of a human to be used and exploited to death, literally to death. We are facing one of the biggest mass extinctions ever, something like that. There are alternate beliefs to thinking about how humans should exist in the earth, like, for example, coexistence. A lot of indigenous cultures, and I'm sorry I can't name specific ones because I'm not super knowledgeable about those yet, but a lot of indigenous and native cultures, human societies that existed for centuries, have, you know, ideologies that coexist in harmony with nature rather than being this unsustainable balance between humans and nature. Or rather, more accurately, they see humans as a part of nature, not something that is separate and not something that is above. Like, we are not above plants, we are not above animals in terms of existing in this shared earth. And that has always been argued to be a more sustainable way to live. But this dominant idea of anthropocentrism has become so popular for some reason. And, you know, it's linked to things like capitalism, where people just start to prioritize profit over well-being, profit over sustainability, or where sustainability is used as like an aesthetic, like sustainability becomes an aesthetic the way, you know, people change fashion trends every 2 weeks. Like, it's rather than being this long-term ideology and way of life, sustainability becomes like an attractive marketing ploy that people use to draw in customers. But, you know, sustainability is supposed to be the way we live our lives and exist, and can help future generations exist for years to come. So with anthropocentric beliefs, we end up with a society where there's little capacity to do much about nature because we have become so separate from nature. I learned in this one class, my professor was explaining how humans, we used to kind of live alongside animals in nature when we were like hunters and gatherers, or when we started, you know, developing our agriculture systems, we still lived beside animals, we still saw nature every day. And then come, you know, kind of the Industrial Revolution, human societies became really, really separate from nature. So we no longer get to see animals the way we do. We no longer see forests and trees and fields and flowers and everything green the way we used to. And that alienation from society could be a large explanation as to why we feel disinclined to do something about it, because people are literally physically disconnected from nature. Like, why would they think about it? And if they do think about it, they might think about it now in terms of the overwhelming responsibility, and then comes climate anxiety, and so on and so forth. So I think anthropocentrism is a really useful way to realize why people are so disengaged from the climate crisis sometimes. And it also goes on to explain potentially why, you know, there's so little opportunities to connect with other people who are taking climate action, because people are more worried about, you know, capitalistic activities like going to work or being productive. You have a focus in education on like STEM majors, like science and technology and mathematics, where, or like, these are all noble professions and subjects, but there's very little in like Malaysia, for example, studying sustainability or nature, because people don't see this as important when, it's actually one of the biggest problems we are facing right now. So rather than seeing sustainability and understanding nature as a necessity, it is seen as a futile thing. And so we end up with a world that is designed with little opportunity to connect with nature, to learn about nature, or to take action with other people to save nature. And therefore, my overall conclusion is it's not that people don't necessarily care about their environment, they just haven't been exposed to many ways that they can help their environment. Like, it took me personally a higher education system to learn more about the environment, and even then I'm still struggling, and not everybody's going to have the opportunity to learn about the environment or solutions the way that some people have with access to university education. Like I said, people are more likely to be worrying about putting food on the table for their families rather than worrying about the food systems that may collapse in the next few decades within our lifetime. And that's a completely valid thing to worry about. You want to think about the next day, you don't have the resources to think about the future, and that's not really the average person's fault. They're not the ones who decided that GDP was going to be more important in an economy. They're not the ones who decided that capitalism was the way to live. And we're just kind of, a lot of us are quite trapped in the system, and we're just gonna have to find ways to live an alternative life, and we're all still figuring it out. I don't have answers, I don't have all the solutions in the world, but what I know is, like, starting this YouTube channel is one way I can share information with people. Maybe for you it's liking and subscribing to this channel. So I think my general message is that for me personally, I need to remind myself not to be so harsh on general society, like, why doesn't anybody care, or why do so little people care? Truly understanding why people are not able to care or respond to climate change is better than assuming that people are selfish. It's more helpful than assuming that nobody cares, because it's not true. A lot of people do care, and more so every day with the rise of, climate change culture and climate activism becoming a thing. So, there's hope, and I am trying to be a part of that. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It'd be really helpful, helps me with the algorithm. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!